Hey folks, so last week we primarily spent building the IS-LM model. We saw how the IS curve comes from the Keynesian cross and how the LM curve comes from that theory of liquidity pressure. So this week we're going to focus primarily on applying the IS-LM model, seeing how different changes in policy can influence both the IS and the LM curve, and how different shocks to each curve can change the total economy. And so just as a quick recap, the IS curve just represents all equilibrium in the goods market. It represents the combination of interest rates and income that'll bring the goods market to equilibrium. Now remember that investment is negatively related to interest rates. As it becomes costlier to invest, people are going to invest less. When people invest less, that decreases total spending. So we have a downward sloping IS curve. The LM curve represents all the different combinations of interest rates and income that bring the money market to equilibrium. And so we have to remember that money demand is positively related to income. As income goes up, people want to take advantage of that higher income by holding more money. And so money demand is positively related to income, and we have an upward sloping LM curve. Now the combination of these two curves and the intersection of the two is that point of income and the interest rate that bring both the goods market and the money market to equilibrium. Just the intersection of the two curves. Now combining these, we can see how different policies are going to influence both the IS and the LM curve. We can see how different fiscal policies can shift the IS curve, and how different monetary policies can shift the LM curve. So let's take, for example, an increase in government spending and see how that behaves in the full IS-LM model. And so if we increase G, if G goes up, we start with the basic IS-LM framework with an upward sloping LM curve, a downward sloping IS curve, and we'll say that we begin at interest rate R1 and income level Y1. So when we increase government spending, we shift the IS curve to the right. Basically, when we increase government spending, we increase total spending. And that shifts that entire IS curve to the right, just like we saw last week. So with higher G, we shift from IS1 to IS2. And that shift from IS1 to IS2 raises income. Basically, as spending goes up, so does income, just like we saw last week. But now, that increase in total spending actually also increases the interest rate. Basically, when people want to increase spending, they need money to spend. That increases money demand and shifts the interest rate up. Shifts the interest rate up along the LM curve. So that increase in government spending still shifts the IS curve to the right, and that IS curve shifts to the right by the size of that government spending multiplier. Shifts to the right by 1 over 1 minus NPC times delta G. And that still has the same basic effect on income. The increase in government spending still increases income. When it increases income, it also increases that desire to spend. And people need to hold more money if they're going to spend more. And that increases the interest rate. And so the IS curve still shifts to the right by that government spending multiplier, but output or income does not go up by that government spending multiplier because we allow the interest rate to change. Basically, when the government spends more, they demand some of that cash, and that increases the interest rate and crowds out a little bit of private money demand. Now, similarly, we can see how a tax cut would behave in this IS-LM model. So again, let's say that the government decreases taxes. They're trying to stimulate the economy, and to do so, they're going to try to cut taxes instead. And so we're going to start with the same basic framework. And we're going to start at interest rate R1. And income Y1. And for that increase, that decrease in taxes is going to shift the IS curve to the right, and it's going to shift the IS curve to the right by the size of that tax multiplier that we looked at in chapter 11. So we're going to shift from IS1 to IS2. And just like in chapter 11, it's still going to increase income, just like it did with government spending. And so that's going to increase income from Y1 to Y2. But also, just like government spending, it's going to increase the interest rate. Basically, in this case, decreasing income encouraged normal people to spend more. And for normal people to spend more, they needed to hold more money, which increased the interest rate, increased money demand. And so that decreased the IS curve to the right. By the size of that tax multiplier. And so when we cut taxes, delta T is going to be negative and the IS will shift to the right. And when that happens, we still raise income. Just like we saw with government spending and just like we saw in chapter 11. But when people spend more, they're going to have to hold more money to do that. That increases the interest rate. And so the IS curve shifts to the right by that total tax multiplier, but total income does not increase by that total tax multiplier. That's because we're allowing the interest rate to shift. We're trying to get a more complete picture of how the entire economy behaves in response to a change in taxes. So lastly, we're going to look at how an increase in the total money supply changes the entire economy. So let's say that the Fed increases the total money supply. If we increase M, and we start with the same framework, let's say we start here at LM1 and here at IS. We'll have this initial interest rate, R1, and this initial income level, Y1. And we know when the Fed increases the total amount of money in the economy, they're going to allow people to spend more. They're going to give people more cash. That in total is going to shift the LM curve downwards. And so we're going to shift from LM1 to this new lower LM curve, LM2. Basically, everybody has more cash to spend, and they're going to try to spend that. When they do that, it's going to decrease the interest rate. And when it decreases the interest rate, it also increases income. So basically, by the Fed increasing the money supply, they cut interest rates. They allow more spending to happen. And when you allow more spending to happen, that shifts the LM curve downward to this new higher amount of income out here. And so an increase in the money shifts LM downward. And when LM shifts downward, that raises total income, right? So that downward shift in LM raises total income. We're initially at this equilibrium right here, and we're now at this new higher equilibrium, higher income equilibrium down here. And because there's more money in the economy, that higher level of income actually happens with lower interest rates. We shifted the LM curve downward and shifted along the IS curve to this new equilibrium, to this lower interest rate equilibrium. And so we can see through this how this increase in M has this stimulative effect on the economy. When you increase the money supply, you allow more people to spend, you allow more people to invest, and that shifts us to a new higher level of income and lowers the total interest rate in the economy.